let's talk about how we project or mirror ourselves in other people. So let's start with this. All the way back to the beginning of time, when we think we separated from God, from that moment on, we already started projecting our inner feelings, which were feelings that were a little off. They were not feeling loving and empowering. They were starting to become painful. The belief that you separate from God, when God is your source, God is love. As soon as you separate from love, that doesn't feel very good. You know, it's like worse than imagining a child kidnapped from a loving family. Take that and multiply it by what? To say, what's it like to be separated from God, to be taken from God? Well, we weren't taken. It just happened organically as a response to our belief systems that, you know, we're not all that God created us to be, which is a mistake, but that's what we felt. So once upon a time, we seem to have separated. So in a sense, at any moment, we can say, not today. I get it. I know that's what we believed, but I'm done with that. I'm going to start believing that I'm still one with God, which is why the Israelites and other cultures said, the Lord thy God is one. Yes, it is. The Lord thy God is one. And this is what religious people did. Oh, okay, we're going to do what we're told. The Lord thy God is one. So, Lord, you are one, which means you're already not one with God. Thank God the Lord thy God is one, and I'm over here. That doesn't make any sense. It was meant to be absorbed. Really, the Lord thy God is one. But when we thought we separated, we can go back any moment in the sense that we can awaken any moment, but it takes tenacity to override this pattern, this program, and compulsion to believe that we're separated. And if you want to believe, nope, I'm going to erase separation, I'm going to go back, you also have to be able to erase the beliefs and the notions that you're flawed in any way. Flawed what you've done to others, flawed what others have done to you. Because even what others have done to us leaves us with this feeling that we're flawed. Even when we didn't do it, seemingly. So, man, there's just something wrong. I just don't feel quite right anymore. A woman surrenders her body for the first time. She can't go back. She said, oh, that's it. And it ended up not being someone I was in love with in many cases. So now how does she reconcile that in her mind that I gave love to something that wasn't loving? She's always going to remember that and be tempted to think she's flawed. Especially if that was taken from her. And then men. Anytime a man, whatever his issues might be, if he thinks he has to be strong anytime he was ever weak, it's hard to get over that. It's hard to get past that, like, God, I'm flawed. And somebody watched, somebody saw when I was weak. Somebody peeked when I was crying. Somebody overheard me when I did this or that or the other. We start shaming. But shame is this vibe that we carry. And you can't just go, I never feel ashamed. Your defensiveness isn't going to prove anything. Resistance and defensiveness, it's not going to help. We carry these strange vibes with us. And I don't care who you are. Man, woman, tall, short, doesn't matter. What race, we have this tendency to carry these patterns, these beliefs that we're somehow flawed. Now, the mirroring concept means that we tend to project them. It's a psychological concept, but we project these feelings outside of ourselves. Why? Because it always feels better. Little heartburn, burp, oh, I feel a little better. And that's what everybody's just your burps. That's all they are, I feel insecure. I create people that make me feel insecure, and I would not feel insecure if it weren't for you. It means I don't feel as bad as I would if I just felt insecure, because it was their fault. You see what I'm saying? We get it out of ourselves and find somebody to stick it to. Oh, I get that. Stick it to. Anyway, stick it to them, get it. And I realize that. Okay, so that's good. So we project it out of ourselves and onto other people. Sometimes they are wounded by that projection, and sometimes they seemingly egotistically are emboldened by it. But even when it seems like a positive trait, we project our things on people. Like there are people that we've met that actually we thought are the answer to our problems. The boss that was going to pay us more, or the partner that was going to make us feel more handsome or pretty or whatever it is. I mean, even positives are projections. The problem is, I don't just thank you for seeing good in me. I need you to see good in me. Heaven help you when you forget to bring me chocolates on our anniversary. See, that's showing that this isn't real. When I need you to be something for me, make up for my father, make up for my mother, be my father, be my mother, be this or be that. I need you to be is when we're in danger, and that's where codependence and everything else is going to come from. So it's not where you can just say, I was in a codependent relationship because my partner did X, Y, and Z. There's two people there. There's a need we have for each other, an ego-based need that we have for the other person to fulfill, and so on and so on. So historically speaking, let's start here. Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, without, whether you call it metaphor or mythology, it doesn't matter. At this point, just the point of the story, the moral of the story, one of the main lessons. Adam and Eve. After there's two trees in the garden. One is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. One is called the tree of life. The tree of knowledge of good and evil means the tree of judgment. The other one's the tree of forgiveness. So God says, two trees, I wouldn't recommend you eat from that one. And we were like, which one? That one over there. But don't touch it. We won't. We just want to make sure we know which one not to touch. Okay, that one. And definitely don't eat from the fruit of that one. Why? What does it taste like? Don't eat the fruit of that tree. And it's not like God said, it's not a real great tasting fruit, whatever, God said, if you do, you will die. You think that would have been like, I'm not even going to look in that direction. Because humans, when they're split in their mind, meaning we think we're separate from God, we think we're flawed, we now are attracted to flaw. We're attracted. I remember saying this to you guys like a year or two ago. People were like, Michael, in the audience, they're saying, Michael, why is it that so many men are like this? And why are men so hurtful and narcissistic and selfish and whatever? And I say, well, because of this and that and the other. But then I also threw in, now can we also ask you why you're so attracted to those kinds of guys? See, that's where we have to look too. Here. Don't just ask me about troubled people you've been in relationships with a dozen times. Well, let's also consider why you like them. I don't like them. Ooh, what's that? See, you did it again. Oh, you're so risky looking. Yes, and you're going to become one of their risks, so be careful. So it's like that. There's that tree, but the tree that we bit, metaphorically, we bit it. We bit into it. We bought into it. A tree of judgment. That's when Adam and Eve now fall further. See, we seemingly separate from God. Now they're in the garden. They could still have a good life and they could still go home. But they don't, because they bite into judgment. Why? Well, if we're not in heaven, we're in the garden now, a heaven-like existence. We're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. So how did we get here? I don't know, but I don't like it. And we started judging ourselves for being separate. We could have forgiven ourselves, which would have been, where's the tree of life? We could have forgiven ourselves and gone home, but we didn't. This is very Course in Miracles like, obviously, but we didn't forgive. Instead, I feel kind of strange, even though I'm living in a great, wonderful, heaven-like life. I think I'm going to bite from this. Judgment, judgment, judgment. And then God shows up. How you guys doing? Not very well, Lord. We feel bad. Why would you feel bad? I left you here in a pretty good state. Yeah, but we're not feeling good. We feel ashamed. We're naked. What makes you think you're naked? Well, the tree you told us not to eat from. It's like for granolas, it's like going to Taco Bell. Like, you shouldn't have gone there, man. So I miss Taco Bell. I got to own it now. Can only happen in Sedona. 3 times they've had a Taco Bell, and they're always like burned down. Or you just know that at night there's some vegan, poof, warming their hands organically, on a cold winter night in the desert. Anyway, Adam and Eve. So God's like, well, why would you eat from the tree of judgment? Adam responds with, she made me do it, And God's like, how could she make it? Well, look at her. She's pretty hot. I mean, there's not a lot of other things around here. And, she's looking good. All I got is me, reflection of me in a pond. It's not doing it for me. She's like, wow. So he blames it on her. She seduced me. Eve, God says, did you really? She says, the devil made me do it. The serpent. The serpent's, like I said in a talk recently at another church, I said, and the serpent's like, that's right. The only one that took responsibility. Serpent's like, me. It didn't say, it just said, yeah, pretty much. Okay, now, they blamed each other. Now, this begins a pattern that we have to remember. We have to recognize throughout history. We can look at Cain and Abel, their children. See, because Adam and Eve are split in themselves about taking responsibility, they not only blamed each other, they had children. And through their children, those are projections of yourselves. See, your children are projections. How am I doing? I don't know, because I don't know how to look within very well. Oh, I'll just have children. And they end up mirroring it for you. Cain and Abel. So Cain ends up killing Abel because Adam and Eve are already conflicted and in a sense in love, but in a sense also resenting each other for the new condition they're experiencing. So Cain and Abel, their children become a mirror of their inner selves. So Cain's got this kind of anxious kind of thing because Eve became impregnated due to the experience with the serpent and the apple. She became impregnated, in case you didn't know that part of the story, from her experience. That's why they say the serpent seduced her. So Cain never stood a chance because he was already a product of her guilt. Just like us, and sometimes we have, our children, we have to recognize, wow, this one's my hesitation. This one child of mine is so fearful, so sensitive, so hypersensitive. Maybe I'm hypersensitive. So afraid, maybe I'm afraid. So aggressive, maybe I'm aggressive. They're mirroring something for someone, one of the parents, or both. So we learn to pause and take a breath and take responsibility and go, okay. And this is what's amazing. True forgiveness, like for example, the Hawaiian Oponopono prayer. What it's doing is imagine saying to your children quietly in your mind, hey guys, I just want to own for a minute that you guys are actually playing roles that are mirroring my stuff. It's inside of me. I projected it out, magnified it, mind you, as you. So my children are actually themselves, but they're also carrying clothing of mine, coats of my issues. I can actually retire them from that. I can actually retire them. Oops. Sorry about that, kids, in your mind. Sorry about that. Poor thing, you've been so scared all these years. You were mirroring my fears. So sad that you were this and that. You can see what you put on them. Even labels. Oh, that one child of mine is pretty and the other one's smart. That's a lie. They're whatever they want to be. Don't label them. This one's this and this one's that. This one's never been good in school. The school you sent them to. You don't know who they are. They need to find out. You can say, I love them. You can say it's my child. But I wouldn't try to take too much possession of it because they basically rented the womb. They rented space. You rented out a womb and they borrowed it. They used it for a while. They're out and they need to become their own beings. If you have any say-so in their lives, it's usually when they're younger in their formative years, and it's mostly as an example. So when they see you stuff your emotions, they're getting it. Note to self, my role model says, stuff your emotions. And then they do it. But not always. Some of them go, I don't like you for stuffing your emotions. It's inauthentic. It's not real. What are you doing? And they grow up and they start acting anxious towards you. Angry towards you. So they're mirroring antagonisms toward you. Like, after all I've done for you. And they're like, yeah, you did all right. I watched you. You were a hypocrite. You stuffed your emotions. It was sick. I remember you talking about, I remember you holding your stomach, Mom. Dad, I remember you having to smoke more just because you were so tense about work. Why didn't you change jobs? I'm 3 and I get it. Why didn't you change jobs? Dad, Mom, whatever. When I'm playing with a toy and I go, I don't like that toy. There's something at a staple and it keeps grabbing my finger. I'm going to toss it and get another toy to play with. Dad, you want to catch on? Change jobs. So we project our stuff and the kids are carrying that. And then, with Cain and Abel, Cain kills Abel, and then Adam and Eve have another child, Seth. And it's an interesting thing that I can't get into too much detail, but Seth becomes like almost like another chance. I'm not saying you have to have 3 kids. I wouldn't even recommend it. But anyway. But Seth represented a new chance. In a way, you could say maybe Seth was Adam and Eve going, we got it. We swung over here. We swung over here. This one killed that one because that's called duality. And it's also a symbol. The one that was aggressive represents material world trying to kill the other one that was symbolizing the mind. So the one kills the other. Watch, listen to life. It's a metaphor. It's all a metaphor. So when you look at your world, your life, ask what it means to you inside. This one child killed another. My mom died this week. Anything that happens in your life, ask, I wonder what the deeper meaning of that is. Any human can go, it's linear. They did that happened to that, and so on and so on. But nothing's linear in spirit. Everything's seen as multidimensional. And we're multidimensional beings, and we'll never know that if we keep thinking linearly. So we have to pause and say, let me look at the deeper meaning of this. And it's kind of cool because you go, I wonder what Seth represents. And Seth becomes a new line. From Seth, we end up with, all the way down the line, Jesus. So it must be an interesting symbol to have Seth. You don't even have to have kids to have this metaphor. You can just say there's a bit of Cain in me, a bit of Abel in me, and I choose the Seth in me. I mean, it's just a metaphor. You just absorb it, just integrate the concept. So, and the Cain bloodline becomes, people like, the kind of the darker beings, in the lost books of the Bible, you'll hear about some of these guys, but taking it to the end of the story, all the way to Judas. Cain's got that, his descendants are kind of a little tenser, a little something about them. And you'll find them resurfacing even in the descendants of Abraham and so on down the line. Because you can't run away from the fact that you think you have an ego. So the ego is going to keep surfacing as one of your children or as one or more of your partners or somewhere. So you can keep trading in partners, but you can also work on yourself. So it's like, wow, I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's fantastic when you think about it. But at some point, there's a guy that comes along named Abraham. His name was Abram, which meant a Brahmin. He was a practitioner of an ancient tradition. And he was an amazing follower of God. He was a believer of God. So God eventually tells him, I want you to get up and move out of your old life. This is important for you and me because when we get spiritual, when we get on the path, it often, but not always, it often includes getting up and moving into a different space, into a different life. So Abraham would get up and he would go to a new life. He gets up and he goes. Now, his name gets changed not to Abram, and it's Abraham. It gets changed for a reason, because he's different, which is why some of you feel compelled in your lives to change your name. I'm not saying you have to, and that's not what necessarily determines you're a new person. It's in here. But a lot of times we do it on the outside as a stamp, as a finale, as a demonstration that I'm changing. So Abraham, his name gets changed. And Abraham symbolizes something kind of cool because before that there were some really high mystic beings in the world. But they were already kind of high level that never descended quite as far as some others. Abraham was a guy who, he came all the way in. He was totally human, like the average man and woman on the world today, that also chose to wake up to to whatever degree he could. So he's got these gifts. So when God says to him, Abraham, I want you to go and multiply, Abraham thinks lots of children. What God meant was, I want you to go and multiply who you are, not through children, but your gifts, your talents. Keep growing. You showed how to be a potted plant and be enlightened. You showed how to be in a human frame and still choose God. That's amazing, Abraham. Good job. Because you've pulled that off, man, I'm going to gift you a lot of cool things. So Abraham says, I would like some cool things. What would you like, Abraham? I would like a child. Oh, is that all? Okay, cool. Because that's very valuable, very important to these people at the time. I would like a child. I'd like a son, somebody to pass my issues on to. No, it's not what he said, but... So Abraham says, I would like a son. God says, no problem. And I mentioned this weeks ago somewhere along the line, but when sometimes you're asking for a prayer, prayer to be answered, a miracle, please remember, one of the definitions, I think this video was called, this lecture talk was called divine timing or something like that. But sometimes when you're asking for a really big gift and you hear the term divine timing used by somebody, what that means is not just like arbitrary God divine timing. It also means when I'm asking for something in my life to change, and if it's something really, really takes something supernatural, if I was praying just to take one step to the right, that's relatively easy. If I was praying for everyone in the room to levitate 3 feet off the ground, because of our belief systems, it seems in the illusion more challenging. So Abraham says, I would like children, but he's already 60, 70 years old. But he's been promised, and his wife been promised, there's going to be a child. And man, I really admire her and his tenacity to believe this. Now, they're told this, it's going to be great. At some point, she starts to weaken. Again, mirroring something for us all. She starts to weaken, and he has his weaknesses. One of them is, every time Abraham moves, he takes his stuff with him. He's attached to his stuff. So he's got to take his stuff with him. And that's a lesson he has to learn. But he also has fears of people in authority. Because when he travels, because he's traveling a bit, because he's told, leave your old life. So if you access your inner Abraham, it means let's leave our own life. And it also means let's multiply our gifts. See what I'm saying metaphorically? Get up, become more spiritual, and let the old world go. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying it literally and everybody should do it today, but at least contemplate it and see what things you don't need anymore. And Abraham's, I need it all to bring it. I'm a hoarder. Let's go. Just taking it with him. But he was afraid. So much so of authorities that he would go to other lands. His wife was considered to be gorgeous. He would go to other lands and, there would be pharaohs and other world, kings and whatever saying, who's she? He thinks, uh-oh. If I say she's my wife, they're going to kill me and take her. That's my sister. So he kept pawning her off on people in authority to become part of their harems. Wow. Like, I think I'd rather die than have that kind of weight, to carry the karma. I'm just pawning her off like she's nothing. So he's doing this, but he's doing it because of save his own neck, right? So he has fear and attachment. Get that? Abraham, great person, but he's got fear and attachment. You can be a great person and still have some issues to work on. Let's accept that. So, Abraham's wife is like, okay, I believe this. I believe we can have a child. I believe a miracle can come. What she does, though, is, but a lot of years have gone by. It still hasn't happened. Abraham, what I'd like you to do is sleep with my handmaiden, and she'll give you the child. Which means, kind of clever, because she found a way to help make this happen, but she lost faith that it could happen in the impossible way. So she found another. This is when we find our way to make something happen. You see the difference? We all lose faith a little, so she lost it right there for a sec. But he gets a child. But because it's a projection of Abraham and his wife Sarah, because it's a projection and she lost faith, I wonder if the kid's going to have some issues. That child comes forth. His descendants become the Arab nations. Now his brother still waiting to be born, Isaac, and his brother eventually is born through Sarah. So they learned a lesson. Because these brothers become nations. They become tribes and they become nations, believe it or not. So that brother, he's got some tension and, the two of them are kind of, at each other here and there. But that's not the end of it because each of them, as they have children, they even have twins in some cases. And those twins end up battling because the children that are coming from us are mirroring things, mainly duality. But they're projections and they wouldn't be there. The children would be free to be who they are if we wouldn't project this. If we would look at our issues, heal our issues, just like when you open a business. It's going to carry and reflect some of your stuff because it's a creation of yours. If I am an artist who believes he can only afford 2 colors of paint. Let's say blue and red. My paintings are going to be filled with blue and red and or a little mixed of the two. You're not going to see other colors, will you? Because that's not what's on my palette. Does that make sense? So we're taking to the canvas what we have available to us. And we all do that. We make businesses, they reflect our gifts and our challenges. You can't, plant a plant into a pot. A landscape. Whatever we do, it's going to reflect. In the shamanic tradition, any indigenous people, when you have dandelions growing in your yard, or you have a particular cactus that keeps coming back, or whatever it is, they say, well, let's look at that. That dandelion growing in your yard could actually be the earth mother saying, hi, honey, how are you today? Oh, I notice you're a little low on this and that and your nutrients. I'm going to give you some dandelion. And we're like, shh, spraying it, Kill it. At some point, and I learned this at my retreat that I had in Washington State, there was a hillside, beautiful grass, but there were a lot of dandelions that would come up. And one day we did our mastery 5-day intensive, and we spent some time on herbology and that sort of thing. But one of the messages, one of the lessons was these things. What are they for? And because I was teaching it for the first time in my life, I picked something and ate it. Never have eaten any, grown kind of thing. So and I'm like, damn, they're watching. Got to live an example, right, guys? Popped a dandelion, ate the head of it, and I thought, that's good, man. I was surprised how good it tasted. But it was a great lesson and another great way to have to step into, what life is about and teaching. This is 20 years ago or whenever it was, but it was kind of another valuable lesson. But what is growing around you is a mirror of something, even on a nutritional level, of what's happening inside. So before you go and, I don't want this and I don't like that, in your life, stop and ask, what is it for? Because if you had the nutrients, the dandelions would probably say, I guess you don't need us anymore. Or whatever the other weed might be, thistles and bristles and whatever else, right? These things are growing and they're saying something to you nutritionally. It's a very beautiful concept if we look at it. So Abraham's children, again, they're kind of mirroring, thank you, they're kind of mirroring this stuff again. And the one child, Isaac, he has children, and his children kind of do the same thing. They're mirroring the issues that Isaac's carrying, which are some of the ones he picked up from Abraham. So they too come forth and they're like, okay, and we're going to just struggle a little bit. And so these two children, Jacob and Esau, same thing, and one of the valuable, very important lessons in this is in these descendants, there's this whole thing called a birthright, which ancients were really, really into. Passing your stuff down to your firstborn male, whatever. That's how they did it. So we're going to pass it down. Well, there become all these little nuances. And in this one case, it's kind of interesting because Jacob kind of symbolizes you, the spiritual, sensitive empaths and New Agers. And his brother's not at all, man. His brother's rough, tough, really hairy, really base, really dense. But he's got the birthright. He's the one that gets all the cool stuff. And Jacob one day is cooking in his tent, and Esau shows up and says, what are you cooking? Because Esau's all about, what are you drinking? I want some. What are you eating? I want some. He's very primal. And Jacob's like, I made some, foods or whatever. And Esau's, I want some. And Jacob's the thinker. He's aware, he's intuitive because he's sensitive, New Ager kind of guy. So Jacob goes, how much do you want this food? I want some food. Give me some drink. I want some food. That kind of, many of our family members, right? So, and Jacob says, well, if you want some food, I'll trade you. Think about this. I'll trade you for the birthright. And Esau said, fine. It was specifically, I want your spiritual birthright. And he actually traded it in, which is when you and I are coming from our ego-based selves, willing to toss away our goodness. Give your body to somebody who shouldn't even be within a mile of you. We trade ourselves in. We bargain our integrities. We take jobs that are terrible for us. But it's the only job you can get, even though you're working in asbestos or whatever else. But it's the only job. And I'm not saying you're bad for trying to survive. I'm just saying we sell ourselves out constantly. Esau sold away his birthright. Jacob then got it. When the dad dies, Esau's angry, primal kind of guy. I'm going to kill you, Jacob. I'm going to kill you. And Jacob's starting to, because he's so sensitive, starts to worry, starts to get all upset. Oh my God, I don't want to be killed. And he actually runs away. Because people have fear and attachment, two major issues that we see as a consistent pattern here. So due to fear, he runs away. Okay, so he's gone, and that's the story where he's Jacob's pillar, and he sleeps, he puts his head on a rock, he has a dream. All these amazing things are happening because he's spiritual and sensitive, but afraid. So if you are spiritual and aware and heightened awareness and you're just intuitive, it's amazing. But you also have to get through being too sensitive and afraid of things. You've got to have a balance. So you got to find a spiritual warrior inside. So Jacob's panicked and he stays away. And at some point, he's told, you got to go back. He hears the guidance. And he's like, okay, I'm terrified. But he did go back. That's called feel the fear and do it anyway. Whatever it is that you're afraid. I'm not telling you to put yourself in harm's way, but I'm just saying watch what you can change and change it. So he goes back. But before he does, he has this vision. And the vision is this angel comes to him. And I'm just paraphrasing the story, but an angel comes to him. And Jacob starts getting this thing about himself. You will not leave me until I get something, he's telling the angel. And the angel's saying, no. You're not leaving. No. And so they refer to this as wrestling with this angel until the next day. And the wrestling match is happening on this hillside. The wrestling match with him and an angel, you probably could imagine it's happening in here. It's with your soul and your ego. You know, the soul is trying to, come on, you can do it. And the ego's, I want something. Well, what's interesting is there's not just a soul and an ego. There's someone in between called the chooser, which is you. The higher self, the lower self, and the chooser. So your soul wants to wake up, but it's afraid. Jacob, in this part, is having to represent the ego. And yet in Jacob, there's a soul that wants to wake up, and that's the angel, who has gifts that he can bestow. So he says, you know what? This time, I'm going to choose not to be a coward like my ego's telling me, the old Jacob. See that? It's the old Jacob, the old you. Get that? I want something. I want to change. And the angel says, oh, you humans always say that and you never mean it. No, you're not leaving. I insist. I want to change. I'm ready. Like Yogananda said. He said, throw a tantrum. Insist on seeing God. The way a child, I refuse to not believe, even if I don't see it. I'm going to stay here. So have that tenacity. Like a kid, mommy, mommy, mommy. Call on God. Call on God and be insistent in a way. And so Jacob is wrestling with the angel, and the angel finally says, I'm paraphrasing again, kind of says, you're serious, aren't you? Back off. No. Back off. No. So the angel strikes him on the hip. And now he can't fight and the angel's free. And the angel says, but I got to tell you. See, the hip, symbolic of moving forward. So he strikes him on the hip and says, you're conflicted. You want this, yet you don't totally want it. But, he says at the end, you did an amazing job demonstrating your tenacity that you want God. And so, your name is now going to be changed to Israel. From Jacob to Israel. And the word Israel means he is real. He's waking up like Pinocchio in the old story. He's becoming a real boy. He's waking up. So good job, Jacob. No, that's not me anymore. He died today. The hill that they fought on ended up becoming called Pineal. The hill he battled on was where? Up here. So the pineal got activated and he became real. Isn't that cool? Still a human being, still having to deal with issues, but he basically passed his test. So Jacob could now say, I'm Israel, and Israel can now say, I push through fear and attachment. So Israel started demonstrating, I don't keep stuff. When I get up and go, I don't take the old with me anymore. That's another lesson. Israel ends up having 12 sons, and they become the 12 children of Israel and became the 12 tribes of Israel. One tribe being Judah, they became the Jews. Not all Israelites are Jews, but all Jews are Israelites. The way you can be a Californian living in America, but not all Americans are Californians. So Jews are one tribe of the tribes of Israel. And from the tribe of Judah is where we had Jesus, birthed in the tribe of Judah. So one of those 12 tribes, his name is Joseph. Joseph is, you probably recognize the Technicolor coat and the, and the rock operas and the Joseph. He's also sold into slavery. Once again, the spiritual son versus the stronger son, daughter. You get it? Often the spiritual people are the whipping posts in their families, the black sheep in their families, the oddballs. They're different one way or another. But they're typically the ones with more heart, true heart, love, compassion, desire for something different, even if they don't know what that is yet. So Joseph is that, and the brothers don't like him. So, this whole pattern is they try to take your inheritance, they try to diss you. So Joseph's brothers, 11 of them, there's 12 brothers. They actually sold him off to the Egyptian king, to the Pharaoh, to get rid of him. And it was like to save their own skin. Do you remember how their grandfather did that? To save his own skin with the Pharaoh? Look at how history repeats itself. Well, Joseph ends up passing his birthright. He ends up being the right-hand man to the Pharaoh because he's traded in. He's tossed to the lion, so to speak. Literally and figuratively this happens. But Joseph believes in God. You are Joseph. Inside of you, you have Joseph, who's saying, let's keep believing in God that will come through for us. And Joseph goes through hell, but eventually it all comes together, and the Pharaoh calls on him, makes him his right-hand man, which is unheard of, especially to what the Egyptians considered to be a lowly race. Joseph becomes the next in line. He's like, wow, this is fantastic. But Joseph passes his inheritance to his two sons. So where we had 12 tribes, we now have 13. Is that making sense? The 13th son became the 13th tribe called Manasseh, which is what our forefathers founded as America. Manasseh became America. And there's all kinds of interesting, bizarre history, but Manasseh was being given the gifts from Joseph, the birthright gifts, all the ones that describe America. And that means, to a degree, America has a responsibility. Just doesn't always practice it. But we do have a responsibility. We're lucky. We are gifted and we are lucky. But we're in a position where you can go back to the beginning where one brother killed another and said to God, when God says, where is he? What am I, my brother's keeper? I don't know where he's at. You do know. You killed him and left him. Liar, come on. Instead of no responsibility, we as a nation could consider, let's reverse that and say we are our brother's keeper. We have gifts that are more plentiful than most countries, but our job is to figure out how to share them. But that's another story. So, Joseph, faith, you can do this. And Joseph prospers. He goes to nothing, but he comes out of it and he prospers. But he still had to fight off his brothers. Joseph is an earlier lifetime of Jesus. Joseph, who was sold off by his brothers, he's particularly sold off by one brother, but they all were part of it. That brother becomes a guy named Judas in Jesus' lifetime, who still sells him out again. You follow? History repeating itself. 12 brothers, 12 apostles. And one of them selling him out again. Yeah, you think, people would just go, okay, wait, not this time. But we keep repeating our pattern. So what I would say is part of this story is we have to stop and say, wait a second. Let's do this differently. Whether you owe me or I owe you, why don't we just stop and say, why don't we call it good? And that's what forgiveness is supposed to be about. It's not just saying, oh, fine, I'll overlook what you did. It's more like, let's just release the whole pattern. And even though I'm talking about the guys, to a degree, Abraham and, these different males in the story, I'll share only briefly a story that I shared once before, a woman named Thecla. She was a mystic at the time of Paul, who's right immediately after Jesus' life. And so, long story short, I shared this story out at your place in your church back east. So Thecla says, I really feel it. Thecla represents the soul, just like Jacob had to fight his demons to become Israel. Thecla's like him. I want to get it. I want to get it. And women were put in a certain caste, to a certain kind of a place back then. So Thecla's like, but this guy, I'm hearing these teachings about Jesus, and he doesn't seem to buy into males and females, superior or inferior. He doesn't seem to buy into races. So I'm going to go with that. I like that. I feel it. So I want to be born again. I want to be baptized. So she goes to Paul because he's big name. Paul, will you baptize me? No. You're a woman, go away. She persistent. Paul, will you baptize? No. Get lost. So she follows him around here and there, long story short, she follows him around. And in the time that she's following him, wanting to be baptized, there are several occasions, 3 in particular, where she almost gets killed and he doesn't step in to help her. So in one instance, she gets arrested because she's a woman and she's not acting the way women should be acting at the time. So in one instance, they get her and they tie her to a fire and they're going to light it up, burn her at the stake. So they light the fire, and a strange storm of rain came and put the fire out. Well, they kind of went, let's just untie her and leave her alone. So they untied her. They untied her and left her alone. So then another instance, and it's amazing, these various tests. But in another instance, it's a totally different incident. She's arrested, thrown into the arena to be eaten by the lions. So here come the lions. They're all going to eat her, and it's like, here's the moment. Thecla's standing there by herself. They're running, coming to her. A female lioness runs in front of her and gets in front and protects her. Back off. And they're like, whoa. The lions are like, what's up with this, man? We thought we were, lions, man. What are you protecting the humans now? So they split. They go, let's let her go. Now, one more time, this is an instance where she gets attempted to be violated by this local lord. So he's got money and prestige. He tries to violate her. She fights him off and tears part of his coat. He drags her to the authorities. She attacked me. Now, this is kind of, relevant, you could say, just the way things are going these days in the news. But she attacked me. And look what she did to me. They're like, you're not allowed to do that. But no, you're lying. They took her out to the arena, threw her in a pool of water with sharks, because the Romans had all kinds of things going on. So they put her in a pool with sharks. Now she's really in trouble. If it weren't for a strange lightning that came from the sky, hit the pool, killed the sharks, and not her. Swear to God. And the sharks, floating, belly up, and she's standing there. And I love this picture after that. She just basically said, you know what, screw it, I'll baptize myself. She's in the water and just, I'm feeling the Lord. I don't need Paul, I don't need anybody else. And Paul was great, he was a mystic, he had his own things, but everybody still has their issues. He still had his trips, whatever they were, about women or whatever. Get past our issues. Get through the tests. Get through the old crap that your family told you. Get through your social stuff, your cultural stuff. Just don't buy it anymore. Even if you think you kind of like it. There's always something better. Living the Christ life. Living, God, you show me. Like she did. Like, the hell with it. I'll just baptize myself. Like, God, everybody's letting me down. She didn't go, God, I would have been spiritual, but they wouldn't let me. I'll just do it. So you may not get the support. You may have the brothers that are real primal, threatening to kill, taking your inheritance, stealing from you, dissing you from the family or whatever they do, Somebody was here, the other day saying, yeah, my family, certain family members, we just went, that, we're done. You're dead to us, that old saying. And people do that. And it's like, you should just say, great, thank you. That made my goodbye a little easier. My dad would do the old-fashioned thing. He'd say, whatever I did, who knows what, and I never did big things. I never broke big laws, never did anything. But he always hated me. So he's like, because of that, you're out of the family. Okay. No, I'm serious. I'm going to go and erase your name from our family Bible. And I'm like, you want me to get an eraser? Like, how can I help? You know what I mean? He didn't know what to do because there's nothing. He had no place to put his claws. So guys, have no place. Be so spiritual when they grab you, they can't hold because you're invisible. You're transparent. When they say, I'm going to tell somebody about, okay, you want me to tell them for you? Don't let them have anything against you. Transparent to God and God first and foremost. And to yourself. Here I am. I have fears. I have doubts. Here they are, and I work on them. Rather than, because I'm a mom, I have to be strong for my kids. Because I'm a dad, I have to be strong. And you do, there's appropriate times. I get that. But am I working on it? Because my job is to become so clear and open, not perfected, but just clear and open enough and transparent enough that perfection can then come to me. I don't need to try to perfect this thing that is dense and limited, that is an illusion. That doesn't even make sense. I'm going to work on my illusion. If it's an illusion, what are you working on? See? So I've got to work on my belief that the illusion is me. And when I've gotten that clear enough, it's like working a layer at a layer, a layer of myself, only to find that which was always there. The God, man, the God presence, the I am presence. Amen, huh? Let's take a few centering breaths. Once again, just surrendering the stuff of the day, surrendering the stuff of the world. With each inhale, I am, we hear those words. And on each exhale, relaxed. Just letting stuff melt away. And let's imagine ourselves standing out in an open area, maybe standing on a rock, just standing up and clear outside. And let's imagine, gradually we'll bring in one type of person and then another. But first, let's imagine an image of anyone that comes to mind. And if they come to mind, we're letting the Divine Mother help us in the process, and she'll help bring just the right image, the right person. So we call upon you, Mother. Show us. Show us an image in front of us, of someone, the way the rabble used to get around and throw stones. Picture someone who represents you doubting yourself. Someone that made you doubt yourself, made you felt like they made you, caused you to doubt yourself. Someone that symbolizes not good enough to you. A parent, a current partner, whomever it happens to be. If no one certain, and it may be more than one person, if no one certain, then just be aware that the voice of you doubting yourself sits there. Not good enough. Let them blow out their words, let them throw out their words, hear whatever they used to say to you or did say to you, and stand strong, clear. Forgive them, they know not what they say. Don't get any further involved than that. Just let them go. Let them just move to the side. Keep them there, but move them to the side. Bring in another person that represents the voice of, you wronged me. You did something bad at some point in your life. Let them be the voice of the person who says you've done something wrong to them. Try to be as centered as you can when they share this. Let them speak. Let them get it out. The more it crushes you, the more it scares you, then it means the more you're actually believing in the power of what they're saying, the truth of what they're saying. If there has ever been a family member or a friend that what we call threw you under the bus, wanted to ixnay you from the family, the will, or whatever it happens to be, let such people come to mind. And gradually fill the space all around you with other people over the next half minute. People that spoke ill of you, people that said you hurt them, people that represent you don't have value, people that represent you will not be able to get that new job, you'll never be able to make that much money, you can't be an artist and survive. Your religion is the wrong religion. Your spiritual beliefs are wrong. You're going to go to hell. On and on. All these people. Let them gather around you. They all throw a piece of wood under you to light. Because of their comments, it's a piece of wood under you to light. And all their words and all their venom and all their hate throws lots of lit matches onto the wood. And then realize you can now disappear. Or you can visualize turning and walking away, because I never said you were tied up. You've never been bound, powerless to do something. So disappear into spirit and move on, or turn and walk away. Forgive them, they know not what they do doesn't mean it's okay that they do it. It doesn't mean that you enable it. It doesn't mean you let it keep happening, but we all come to a point in our lives where we realize we can choose to say it has no power over us. We can choose our reactions. And we walk. And as you walk, wherever you go, feel immune. Visualize that you feel alive, not bound. You feel alive. Kind of sad. You're okay, if you feel sad. It's kind of sad that they didn't want to know the real you. It's kind of sad that they're hurt and stuck in their hurt. But that would mean, if it's kind of sad that they're acting that way, then let's give them love, not rationalize what they've done. Let's just move on our way and picture a wave of love washing over those people. They can soak it in, they cannot soak it in. That's choice. But goodbye. And we realize we're rising and becoming Israel. We're rising and becoming baptized like Thekla. We realize we're becoming part of the Christ consciousness rather than all the broken people who attack. and we feel gratitude, and we feel such deep gratitude that we have an ability to choose and to say goodbye to things that are so silly, so hurtful. It would be wonderful if your family and friends always would have been loving and supportive. But when they weren't, just let it go, because you don't actually need it. You don't need their validation. You're already validated. And the only part that would still want it is not the God part. So it becomes a choice again. Do you want the ego voice or the divine voice speaking to who you are? Feel that last moment of gratitude and let that gradually fade away. And then gradually stretch out. Just stretch the neck and back a little bit, not just from sitting, but also it helps to kind of take that energy and integrate it into our being. Into every muscle, into every joint, allow that to set in.